Up next, we have, I think it's a double header of panels, certainly one panel coming up, and two, well, I'm sure our panels are adding in two. This panel is going to be on the best practices in user acquisition and retention. It's not going to be hosted by me. I know that'll be a shame for many of you there who come to know and love my dulcet tones, but it's actually going to be hosted by someone that knows far more about these things than I do. So I believe we have coming into the room our good friend Peggy. Hello, Peggy. Peggy and Salz. How are you, Peggy? Are you? I can't quite hear you yet. She's just joining. She's going to. Hi, Peggy.
Hello there. I love your dulcet tones. Indeed.
Well, I do. But it's lovely to have you. With us for this. Yeah. Are you? Your panelists are joining, I think, steadily. They're coming.
They are indeed joining. Do you want to do a quick intro, or should I?
I'll let you do it. I don't want to interfere. People have heard enough of me. I'm just going to let you. I'm going to let you kind of do the do and talk to them. There's at least 3 of them. I don't know how many you've got. Probably 100. But I'm going to move. I'm going to move on and let you take the stage. I'm here in the background if you need me with any issues, and I'll try and. Questions will come in the Q&A if you want to add those. I'm sure you have plenty of questions of your own. So over to Peggy, who's going to run this panel. All yours.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's great to be here, and it's such a good panel because, of course, best practices. That's what we all want to know. We do have to introduce the panel, so I will kick it off. I'll just go in order here. We have 2 representatives of hyper casual games. Maybe Tibo, you kick it off. We know that you are indeed from Voodoo, but what's your position there again, please?
Sure. So hello everyone. My name is Tibo, and I'm running the Perbalas team at Voodoo. So it's a bit more on the creative side of UA, but yeah, I created the team and I'm managing it. I've been managing it for 3 years now.
Absolutely. So you're going to be talking more about creative optimization. Matej, you are more focused, of course, on Traplight. That's going to be mid-core, another different approach, another different perspective you'll be bringing to the panel, but you also have Battle Legion recently. So that's going to also be something that you're discussing. Maybe you just want to give me a little bit of background so that everyone in the audience understands where you fit. Tibo is very focused on creative. I think you're very focused on strategy.
It is basically strategy, creatives, and also like the hands-on work on the UA side for all the UA activities for Traplight and Battle Legion.
Mm-hmm. And of course, what would UA be and retention if you can't finance it and if you can't sort of join your teams around it? And Martin, that's where you're going to come in, of course, from Pollen VC. But for our audience, maybe you just want to tell us a little bit about how you're going to bring that perspective to this best practices panel.
Sure. Hey, Peggy. So yeah, so at Pollen, what we do is we provide capital to help scale via paid user acquisition. So we're super focused on numbers. We've got a bunch of different modeling tools. We help people understand their metrics of paid acquisition, and when you hit ROI positive, then it should really be a case of like, you know, how can I scale this until the economics don't work anymore, until my acquisition costs approach my lifetime values. And we are, you know, we work with 100 odd developers, helping them scale up just by providing capital to throw into that user acquisition formula in a very capital efficient way without having to go and raise venture capital to put it into UA.
Okay. And of course, it all doesn't make sense if the measurement doesn't work out. And if we don't have some best practice from understanding, for example, what you're doing, Asaf, in not just within Pangle, but within the regions where you're also very active, and you'll be bringing some of those best practices. Maybe tell us a little bit about Pangle first.
Sure. So nice to meet you guys. I lead product marketing at Pangle. So Pangle is the leading app monetization and user acquisition platform in Asia today. It's part of ByteDance, which owns TikTok and other properties that you may know. And yeah, and we bring, I think, a unique perspective on a market that many of you would like to be more active in.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly where we want to start. But first of all, I wanted to start with, it's a very practical hands-on panel. And I want to understand, just to kick it off, how have you been working? It's work from home. That is the new normal. What's your best work from home tip? I'll just do a round call, maybe starting with you, Asaf, and then we'll go backwards. What have you done to work better in the conditions we have?
So good question. I think the best decision I made is 4 months ago to get a dog. And it's been amazing. I can show it to you guys. It's a cute King Charles Cavalier, and it just makes the days without colleagues much more fun.
Okay, I'll go for that. Martin, what about you?
Reopening schools. So when I'm able to work from home, and my wife's able to work from home without having to homeschool three minis as well. So that's been a big revelation. We were locked down for about 3 months or so here, so back at school as of today. That, and I'll go with Asaf as well. We got 2 kittens recently, and whilst they learn you learn not to have them as sort of time wasters, they're also pretty good company and keep you sane in the days behind the iMac.
There you go. We have 2 votes for pets as keeping us sane. Matej, what about you?
Well, to be honest, I'm pretty much enjoying the work from home environment for some years already, and now this like COVID situation even made this even more broadly appealing for other companies. But like my best not tip but workaround is just not having the calls for everything. Just sometimes you don't need to have a call. It's just like one small text on Slack or email is more time efficient than organizing a call for 30 minutes or 1 hour for like 10 people. So that's something that really like made my time efficient. I'm sticking to that.
Exactly. And that's why you're going to give us tips on being efficient in UA and retention. You've had so much time to work at it. Tibo,
exactly.
Last up. What about yourself?
Yeah, well, it's not very original, but it's the same. I got a dog, and forces me to go.
Come on, guys.
So, yeah. Very happy about my dog.
Okay. All right. So we're going to do UA, then we're just going to do the journey. You're going to start at UA, and we're going to go through to retention, maybe even a little bit of other steps along the way when people drop out of the funnel and get them back. But kick it off with mid-core. Because Matej, this is the one where you have to be smart about spend. They are not cheap to acquire. They are very expensive to reacquire. What has worked, or what are the differences really compared to last year?
Yeah, well, to be completely honest with you, like Battle Legion is not a typical mid-core game. Thankfully, because of the visual design and everything that the game represents, we are seeing pretty low CPIs in comparison to other mid-core games, which is great. But last year, we global launched the game in July, so it was pretty nice ride. Usually, working with the main UA channel, Facebook, UAC, communities and whatnot. Right now, this year, which is like very big difference between this year and last year, is the performance on Facebook, which was definitely stellar last year, but now in the last couple of months, the performance was dropping quite significantly. So that's why we started like moving away from Facebook and starting like approaching the different channels like Mistplay or focusing more on Unity. And now like the biggest difference is the performance on UAC campaigns. It's really like a couple of years ago, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't say this, but UAC has been performing absolutely amazing this year in comparison to last year. So being smart about like moving very efficiently the budgets between the Facebook, Google and other channels started to work pretty well for us.
That's interesting. I had heard about the drop off in Facebook. I wasn't aware of UAC really going through the roof. Tibo, I'd like you to weigh in on that. I have some other questions, obviously, for you, but just from your experience as the other publisher on this panel, is it the same for you?
Yeah, it's actually funny because we had the same experience. So trying to go harder on Unity ads and AppLovin and Iron Source than Facebook, because there's definitely been a drop, and Yeah, other than that, I mean, the key difference, I guess, between mid-core and hyper casual is that hyper casual, we have lower CPI, and it's really about making a product that from the get-go has a low CPI. So it's kind of a head start, I guess, for UA to really start with games that are so easy to market.
I mean, that's always been the way for hyper casual. Talk about the retention curve that you're aiming for a little later on, because I think that may or may not have shifted. Everyone is talking about hybrid casual as well. You work strong on the creative. Can you tell me about the adjustments that you're making in order to make a difference in UA? Maybe there's something there, maybe it's something simply in the creative, or perhaps it is in the gameplay. What is working for you?
Right. So something we did with playable ads, and I know it's kind of, I don't know if a lot of people in the audience are making a lot of playable ads because they're kind of expensive to make, but from what we can see, they tend to ameliorate the long-term retention of users. So when they are acquired through a playable ad, they tend to stay longer in the game. And this is very interesting because on top of that, you have high install rates, maybe that's it. I guess for playable ads is the really something you should consider when you're launching a game, or hyper casual or mobile. Or
so you want to put that into numbers, maybe just general numbers, Tibo, on what you're seeing first. Because playables are a format that's working, but how do you judge that? We'll get later to measurement, but I would like to hear that because you brought it up.
Sure. Yeah. So I don't share a lot of number, obviously, but we're seeing a lot of potential with playable ads. We're seeing IPMs and install rates is the same thing, right? But they are double compared to videos, and we are still, the most exciting thing, I guess, is that there's still so many things to do, and we are still managing to double or sometimes triple IPMs that we thought would be like the maximum. Like when you get to 7% install rate or 8% for an hyper casual game, it's really super high already, and we still managed to improve that by like 50, 100%. So yeah, I guess that's my numbers for now.
That's amazing metrics. I wasn't aware of that, so that's good. That's something that is just a surprise to pick up here. I won't let you go on that one. Martin, you've worked with so many companies in this space. I mean, metrics like that, what does that make you consider in terms of best practices here in UA? I mean, it sounds like it's going great for him. So what is that? What do those numbers tell you as someone who looks at funding and keeping, that wheel turning?
So really for it, I mean, in terms of like reading the tea leaves from a finance perspective, there's a couple of things that are really important. First, how quickly you break even, and then what that ultimate LTV journey goes on to be. And we've seen and worked with a bunch of companies, both developers and publishers, who've got these crazy short break-even cycles, which means that if you're looking at through like a really effective financial lens, that you can be recycling and respinning this money back very efficiently into UA and hyper casual. So we love hyper casual as a sector because the half-life is so short, right? So we did a thing recently, published a couple of months ago on our website, what we call a hyper casual velocity calculator, and showed you with how many days to break even, how many times you could spin that same dollar around the track within one payment cycles of the ad networks. And obviously, if it's an ad network that's got like net 30 or net 60 days, then you can literally cycle that money sometimes 10, 15 times around the track within the same time frame. So that's really what we kind of like focus on, and this really rapid recycling of money back into UA, because obviously the worst thing that you want to do is to blow your UA budget. You get halfway up and then you just run out of puff and then you just drop like a stone. So again, and I mean, like finance is part of the whole picture. We think of it all as like like an orchestra, right? You've got all the different parts of the orchestra, and they all need to be working, and they all need to kind of be gelled together. And finance is just one of these different things. So it's really about, again, obviously you have to have a laser focus on the numbers, and then really thinking about what those numbers are telling you in terms of your ability to reinvest and keep investing, And sometimes that can really make the difference between either a kind of go or no go on a launch, or sometimes it forces people to maybe work with publishers just purely out of financial resources, whether they sometimes could do it themselves. And it's different in every situation, but I think finance people typically focus this sort of user acquisition costs and some of the product metrics sometimes ahead of the financial metrics, when really UA is just an investment equation. So we try and sort of like stay very focused around just that sort of the way we see things.
Very smart to say focus, as you said, as an investment equation, and to think of that. We're going to talk about metrics, but another thing you need to think about, another thing you need to focus on, rather, Asaf, and that's why you've been quiet down there. But now we're going to bring you in, because we've been talking about the formats. It's one thing to discuss what the performance is from the publisher perspective, also finance, but I've been hearing that playables are quite successful and quite the focus. Now, you're exploring a number of different formats active in the Asian market. Maybe perhaps you can bring some of those insights first from the Asian market. What are the formats that might have the biggest success, or the approaches to UA that you're seeing there that might be able to be textbook models here?
Yeah. So I think one of the most interesting formats with in Asia, specifically in China, but also across Asia, are ad formats that depict people playing the game. So I think in the US and EMEA, we often see kind of voiced over gameplays videos, which can be similar to streaming gaming content that you may see on Twitch or YouTube. So in Asia, they took it a step forward, and the growing trend is like hilarious, funny ads that just show the people playing the game, and kind of, you see part of the gameplay, but more than that, it kind of shows you how how people feel and what the experience that the game leads to. So this is super interesting. To a certain extent, it even reminded me of a TikTok format. It's vertical, it shows people going through an experience. So this is very cool. And
what's the impact on UA? Can you give me some sort of range? Because this is a successful approach, showing people with the gameplay. What makes it outstanding for you?
So we see it across our clients that they're leveraging it. We didn't do the research of this format versus others.
Okay.
But it's definitely a growing trend, and I can't give you an exact number, but it's getting high performance.
Okay, so we have that high performance. Tibo, that's an interesting format. I've heard a lot about that as well, that, the streaming, the gameplay, having people enjoying the game is a great way to acquire people for the game. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? Have you explored that? Or is Asaf here bringing us new news from Asia that we'll be seeing in the next year?
Yeah, I guess it makes sense for games that I see in Asia. They kind of have more complex game with a lot of elements, so I guess it makes sense. For hyper casual, just playing standard playable ads in a way, they kind of do for the US, for what we see already. And again, I think there's a lot of potential already, just making things that are very simple already. There's so many unexplored territory within creatives, like what we can do. And I guess like it all depends on your budget also in the end. Like if you have a lot of money and you want to be super innovative, I mean, there are a lot of things to do, but also if you're kind of on a budget and you want to make something that works, there's also a lot of possibilities to do. And again, like with the simple things you see, like the videos, the playable ads, like you can already make something super creative with that brings a lot of performance.
Matej, maybe you want to weigh in there as well. What works for mid-core?
Yeah, because we tried these influencer type videos with people playing the game. When compared to other other creative concepts, this didn't work that well on any channel. So it's also important to say what channels are you using for these type of creatives, what type of game as well. And also, like as I've mentioned, probably these type of videos will perform differently in Asia in comparison to other European or US markets. Mm-hmm. So we tried that, didn't perform that well. Also, the same thing with playables. For example, we're using playables on ad networks, mainly on Unity, but when we are comparing the results between Facebook, UAC, and Unity, playables on Facebook, no way. It's like complete trash. UAC, not that much, definitely better than Facebook. Depends on like the bits and the inventory you are actually showing those playables in. But on ad networks, absolutely perfect performance. Like Tibo mentioned, like really high IPMs, definitely way more, unlocking way more scale with playables on ad networks, even for mid-core game.
Okay. It's interesting because we're only like a third through here, and we've got so many questions coming in. We must have hit some sort of chord here, because people want to hear more about hyper casual. We want to hear what you said about your channels as well, Tibo. But I'll move forward a bit in the discussion just to cover all the bases here. We still have to get to retention. We got a while to go, but I do want to step back to one thing, because I've written about it extensively also for Pocket Gamer, as well as articles and podcasts elsewhere. You know, things are not going to be so simple going forward. It has been a massive influx of organics. It's going to be a completely different game going forward. And we're going to have to think differently, because the data is not always going to be applicable that we have now, you know, compared to pre-pandemic. So everything is going to change, including how we work around funding. And I want to bring this up to you, Martin, because this is another aspect of what you talk about, which is, you know, what do you need to do when you have to rethink? And it has to come down at some level to how UA teams work with the rest of the company, specifically the finance function. That's a big part of what you do, but what can you say is a piece of true best practice and advice around this? You know, what does the relationship between finance and UA need to look like in order to pay for this and not break down?
You need to unmute yourself.
You're on mute, Martin. There you go. There you go. No problem.
So yeah, we've just worked with a bunch of different teams. We've seen this work really well, and we've seen it work badly. And we've got maybe a little bit of sort of contrarian thinking around there. There's a really, I mean, finance and UA should be like when they're joined at the hip, and financing user acquisition is a shared problem with the marketing guys. It works much better, right? And actually, there's we're sponsoring the CFO track tomorrow to try and talk about financial literacy and force the highlight on how people need to think about sort of financial planning and stuff and metric stuff. So, but the key thing we've seen is when you've got this idea of set budgets and the sort of separation between the finance guys and UA guys. And very often it depends on the size of the company, right? The finance guys might sit in a different office or in a different team or floor, and they're just focused on numbers, which they should be, right? And the UA guys are sitting around the corner, whatever, and they're just focused on metrics. And so I think the worst kind of travesty you can see is money being left on the table when UA managers know that the UA is working, the numbers are returning really well, but they operate in this idea of like a fixed budget. So your budget for the month is 100K, and the UA manager thinks, hey, my best practice here is to go and spend that 100K, get as many, high LTV, low acquisition costs, whatever it may be, and that's what I'm kind of measured by. And and so many people still operate on that basis. And where we've seen it work really best is basically the finance guys and the UA guys sit down together and figure out, have we got a machine here? Is for as long as the well is open for drinking, how are we, and it's a common problem between the finance guys and the UA guys, going to drink as much as we can until it dries up? And so again, having this sort of this idea of working together, it's a shared problem. It's not, you know, you're a finance guy, I'm a UA guy. It's like, as long as that well is open for drinking, everyone should be sitting around, huddling around, and say, okay, how are we going to maximize the opportunity until, you know, as sure as death as taxes, two things are going to happen. The acquisition costs are going to rise, the LTVs are going to crest. And, you know, if you were being sort of purist around demand economics theory, you would buy all the way up to basically the intersection of your acquisition cost and your LTV. In economic terms, that's where your marginal cost and your marginal revenue intersect to maximize profit. In reality, you're probably not going to do that because the vagaries of freemium, you don't want to be underwater on it. But if you set some parameters, and it could be, I'm gonna keep buying until, you know, until I make maybe it's a 5% or a 10%. I mean, everyone's going to be different. And then just factor in if you have to go and raise external capital, whether that's debt or equity or revenue-based loans or whatever, just be really, really focused around, you know, by the time you focus the extra cost of the financing in, does it still make sense? And so you're just looking at it purely from a financial viewpoint, but where the finance guys and the UA teams are joined at the hip and it's a shared problem, that's definitely part of the recipe for success. Where you see, and we've seen it with public companies, right? I mean, public companies have a different problem, and we've seen it, you know, like Q1, Q2, Q3, they're spending a ton of money, all the rest of it. By the end of Q3, let's say, the budget's gone. They can't go back to the CFO of that company and say, hey, this machine is really like making hay, I need more cash, because all of these things have to be set up, you know, quarters or a year in advance and disclosed to investors and so on. So this isn't just like a problem for the little guys. This goes all the way up the curve, and, you know, subtly different. But I think where you see it's, when you can just shine a light on the problem and you can work together and it's a shared problem between the two, that in our experience of seeing some of those teams work like that has been, you know, that's where it can, you know, it works the best effect, to the point that actually we came across one company recently that the marketing function actually sits under finance, as opposed to sort of to the side of it. Because these guys, I think, have just realized that this is, you know, this is such an important, you know, in terms of capital allocation, resource allocation, it's a financial allocation decision. So
that's I want to just ping in on there for a moment, because that's the way it's going to be, or should be, in your opinion, as best practice. You sort of love your CFO. Tibo, I'm just curious, in the way you work, is that the mentality, or is it shifting? Is it more focused on, again, working more closely so you don't have to go at the end of the quarter and just say, look, I need more budget?
Yeah, I mean, that's super interesting what you're talking about, Martin. So I know that again, I'm more on the creative side, right? But we divided at Voodoo the creatives and the UA and the finance, but we're working in a really close collaboration. And I know, well, the UA obviously are more, you know, talking with the finance. They're talking with them on a daily basis. They're always talking between each other and trying to know what kind of budget they can spend and everything. And I know for the creatives, we have kind of this free thing where I can basically spend what I want, and of course I'm have the ownership of making sure that it's bringing money in the end. But yeah, it's really like a tight collaboration between everyone at Voodoo.
I have a lot of questions coming in, which says that we have a lot of interest. I'm going to take one in here, and then we're going to switch to retention. Otherwise, we won't get to them, and they are piling in. I've done this many times at Pocket Gamer Connect, and it's not like this. There's lots. So let's just take one before we move over to retention. We'll stay on performance. Some top tips on increasing playable IPM performance. Matej, Tibo, which one of you wants to start with that?
Well, I can just I can tell you from my perspective on the UA side of things, and then Tibo will probably make more or better tips or suggestions. But look, playables are always about setting expectations and showing up the gameplay, and trying to show the players what exactly are they going to see in the game as well. So as soon as you can, give them better feeling of the game and they set the expectations right, then the IPMs will go up immediately.
Mm-hmm. Tibo?
Yeah, so one thing that I saw is that, so I built a Playbalance team at Voodoo, right? I think one thing that helped us really bring the performance out of the playable, and we're still doing it, still seeing some amazing achievement with them, and still seeing some growth where we thought it was not possible. So I think one thing is to get creative people and to make them understand the numbers and like the CTR and the install rate and all those kind of things. A lot of people, they actually don't a lot of creative people, for example, making videos, they don't really understand as far as like the CTR, the install rate. Like it's kind of easy to grasp, but they don't really think about it when they're creating. And for playable ads, since they are interactive experience, right? They're mini games. So you really have to know, like, did people engage with that? So that's your CTR. And then did people like it enough that they want to understand, that they want to install the game? And did they understand the game? That's a lot of different things. It's really hard to have data inside of your playable ads, but some partners, they can offer that. So I think Luna can do it. And it's really like you have to take that in order to have as many data as you can and to have creative people understand really the impact of what they're doing. And that's how you can, that's how we saw the increase we had.
Asaf, they need data, they need insights. I have a question here as well on localizing UA campaigns for the Chinese market. Can you weigh in here and offer us some insights on what publishers need to do to make this work?
Yeah, maybe before I get into that, I think it's interesting to look at playable from two angles, one for casual and one for hardcore. And in general on Pangle, we see that playables outperform other formats. So we see like 20% lower CPA for playables across the board. But we see different publishers and developers using playables. So with casual, we often see them kind of trying to show the basic gameplays and letting letting users go through the stages to get them to download. With hardcore, it's kind of harder to really show the game. It's a much more complex game. So we generally see, light interactions, like guiding them to explore the story, maybe get items, maybe draw figure cards, but things like that, which, give you a taste of the game, but it's not really fully playing the game. Now, you asked specifically about China. So yes, in China, I think what we see with non-Chinese developers, Chinese developers often, develop the hardcore games because they're complex, they're developed for the Chinese user. You really need to understand the user to build a hardcore game. We see non-Chinese developers succeeding more with hyper-casual. One of the reasons is because they require less localization, right? At the end of the day, the interactions in those kind of games are pretty universal, right? So yes, you need to change the language a bit, but not a lot of localization is needed. Second, those games are not subject to regulations, while IAP-based games are. So in-app purchases are regulated by the government, so it's harder for non-Chinese developers to get into China with IAP-based games. And lastly, the taste of the Chinese user is changing, and it's moving towards hyper-casual. So about 5 years ago, I think a quarter of the top 20 games were hyper-casual. Now it's half. So there's definitely, a hyper-casual opportunity in China and in general in Asia.
Okay. One question that came in, I'm going to try and speed it up because we didn't get to retention yet, but that shows me that everybody wants best practices about UA first, which is absolutely fine, fully understandable. I'll stay with that because it's a good question. How reflective of the gameplay does a playable ad need to be? In other words, is there a difference in performance based on how reflective the gameplay really is of the game itself? Maybe starting with you, Tibo, because you're into creatives and you're watching that so carefully.
Sure. Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna answer every question. That's all right.
Well, everyone's interested. No, I'm not saying everyone's interested in hypo casual, but no, seriously.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, you're right. Sometimes they are different. Sometimes you see things as well that like the wording are not very right. They're not very in English, very much in English. There are a lot of different things like that that we use. We use them at Voodoo. We saw them like everywhere. Everybody does that. And it makes sense for some games. It really depends. It really depends on the game and on what you see. Yeah. It really, I mean, the thing is, like everything you see, like during your benchmark with the creatives, mostly people thought about this and they have an idea behind like using broken English or those kind of things. So it's really a matter of using it to your advantage and trying them as best as you can to see if it fits. Like if a puzzle game or a casual game has a very different gameplay from what you see when you download the game in the playable ads, then it makes sense to test it as well, because it's something that probably worked. So yeah.
Okay. Speaking of benchmarks, let's move to retention, because that is a big part of this. It's one thing to get them into the game. It's another to keep them engaged. I'll ask the question because many people ask this. And if you understand this, then you understand the strategy that needs to follow. Matej, what does an engaged player look like?
Well, for Battle Legion specifically, engaged player is the player that actually reached rank 8-ish, which means they played a couple of sessions already, and they're already like very much invested in the gameplay. They like the game. So anyone who reached rank 8 and above, that is engaged player. And basically, yeah, well, we're also looking at the engaged players through the ROI lens, of course. Well, because like the first payment they use is either a battle pass or a starter pack. Then like immediately they become engaged and play more because of the battle pass as well, progression.
Okay. What about the retention curve, Tibo? That's a great topic. It's changing, it's shifting for hyper casual. What is the goal here in retention? Is it the day 14 at a certain percentage, 15%, 20%? What can you share about what the benchmarks are for effective retention marketing?
Yeah, I'm not sure I could really answer this question, but
okay.
I know that it's really a game of balance between your retention and your CPI and all of your different metrics to make sure that you're breaking even at the end, or you're making profit. That's even better, but yeah.
Okay. So rapid fire here a little bit, given the retention, what engaged user looks like, what you're aiming for in your genre, some best practices here, some mechanics, what do you do to support the goal of, game loyalty, loyal players, people playing in your game, playing in sessions, either monetizing them with ads or with in-app purchases, Matej?
Yeah, well, it's a combination of UA activities and product features, obviously. Battle Legion actually implemented like a couple of events features in the game, boss raids, and actually features that keep players engaged, and also like in combination with the different re-engagement campaigns on Facebook or other channels that kind of like proves to be very much efficient in terms of like keeping the players in, looping them again, back again into games. So it's not only about UA, but in a very close cooperation with other departments too.
Okay. Of course, it's a question also of how expensive it can be to stop churn before it starts. What are the signs of a user's churning? It's just that they stopped playing or playing more frequently. What should people be looking for as the red flag that says, this is when I need to step in?
Well, that is also a question more for the product teams as well, but UA and product is very much like a best friend, right? So looking at the number of sessions and again, like from our perspective, looking at the boss rates, completes, and the rank progressions and the FTUE as well, and it's like where are the pain points where the player is actually churning out, and then trying from product side trying to improve that, but on the marketing side trying to get those players again back in the game with maybe a small like a suggestion of like what they can do to actually cross that pain point and still continue playing the game.
What are you seeing at Pangle, Asaf? Because it's very much focused on monetizing the audiences, but of course, again, there have to be some best practices that you're seeing your partners, your publishers applying to ensure they can do this for longer.
Yeah, I'm not sure I have an insight specifically about that. Yeah, I'm not sure.
Not sure about that. Well, we are coming up on time, so I wouldn't be concerned too much about that. Maybe just do a round of some best practice, well, some examples. You know, I want to understand some hacks, even for that matter, of just exactly that. You know, you have to retain all the players. Of course, it can be expensive to do that. You have to make a call on where you're going to invest what. Maybe we'll start with you, Matej, because of course, for you, you have a very clear view of what an engaged user looks like. It's a very clear and very high amount to lose them and reacquire them. What are some growth hacks to avoid that?
Well, you know, if players are just, they decide that they will stop playing the game, there is no way how you can convince them to get back. But what we found out, like previously, running some engagement campaigns and some segments of players, then we saw the best results from re-engaging the players that actually dropped out. Like looking back, like 2 weeks, not more, because if players didn't play for longer, the interest of getting back is just not there. But then focusing, this is like a very small percentage of the overall growth strategy. I mean, you pouring the players in from the UA perspective, working with the creative side of things, and then trying to experiment with different creative approaches is something that can drive pretty significant growth to every game. And just not be like trying to be more flexible on the crazy ideas from the creative perspective that you can implement and run. That's something that performed quite well for Battle Legion in the recent months. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of like fake gameplay or fake hats, which are all around the place, but we found out like something like a middle ground of fake gameplay or fake situation that we created actually in the game, which is performing really well. And you know, it's a still, we are still showing the gameplay, but you know, we are showing these ridiculous funny moments which are not obviously part of the rank progression or whatever. And this is something that actually worked quite well for Battle Legion and enabled us to grow that the game pretty efficiently, at least like this year.
Okay, so I'm hearing, you know, 2 weeks that they're dormant, that's when you re-engage. A lot of discussion around targeting. I want to end it on that because targeting is changing so much. And, you know, can you even do specific targeting? Is it typical to do, for example, specific targeting for hyper casual UA campaigns, Tibo? You know, hyper casual creatives should work in many cases without targeting, but is that the case?
Yeah, so the concept of hyper casual is that they're the simplest possible games, so everybody should be able to play them. So there's no targeting, at least at Voodoo. I don't know if other publishers are targeting, and I think that could be interesting. I think we probably tried it and it didn't really work for us, but can take my word for that. You have to get to UA. But yeah, I mean, I don't think, again, I think it can mostly be a question of no targeting and having as much innovation and creativity and like growth hacks and everything. And it's basically free to have that. You could think about launching games by like growing an Instagram page, and it's free to do, for example, a TikTok page for the matter. But I mean, there's so many things to do without targeting that is free as well.
Mm-hmm. Asaf, you're nodding. Is that what you're seeing amongst your partners?
Sorry, I'm muted. Yeah. It makes sense for us as well, even in our region and on our network.
Mm-hmm. I'll stay with you, Tibo, for a moment, because a question just came in that's also relevant to you and Voodoo. Some retention techniques, therefore, you know, it's very broad audience. We talked about targeting. What about retention techniques?
Retention techniques. I guess that would be more on the game side, the way we do it at Voodoo.
Okay, so more in the product. Okay.
The product. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I mean, we really have a really simple approach at Voodoo, and it's just a matter of like trying to master it as best as we can. And the approach is just to make the best games we can, or the games that have the most retention from the get-go. So it's really natural. I don't think we're really using that many tricks to get people to stay longer in the game. As Matej said, like it's really a matter of like, if your game is good and people want to stay in it, then they're gonna stay. I guess some easy things like having a level progression with like things you get money, and then this money you can spend on skins and everything. I know it has an impact on the retention, but then it's really, I mean, it's not like you have so much room to do that with hyper casual. You have much more room with mid-core and casual to do that, because people actually care about the skin they're buying. In hyper casual, I mean, it's interesting, but it's not the main feature of the game, right?
Okay. We have another 10 questions coming in. We're not going to get to them because we've already gone over, and Chris has been so kind as to give us some time to go over. I just want to go around again. At the start, we said it was best practice for UA or retention. I want to have a growth hack or a top tip, very succinct, rapid fire, starting with Martin. Go around. What do I need to do to get the most out of my UA/retention efforts?
I think we'd say like invest time in building frameworks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you know, we've seen so many people go through like really scrappy things, trialing ideas, you know, chasing rabbits all the rest of the time. If you're actually creating a framework where you can say, I'm going to run these tests and measure them, and you invest in the infrastructure to enable you to be doing these, then it's going to be a lot easier to then process and progress and try and just, and yeah, if you've got that sort of if you've got that underpinning, then you're going to be able to operate at scale when
Mm-hmm.
things start to work. So I think invest time in building the frameworks would be our suggestion.
Okay, and very much thinking of it as an investment formula. Asaf, you're next. What would yours be?
I would say that if you're going into some markets like China that are harder to get into from a cultural standpoint, get a local partner. Get a local partner that can help you adjust both your games and your UA strategy and succeed together.
All right, makes sense, because that's what I've often heard for that market. It makes total sense here. Matej.
Yeah, I would say don't rely only on one channel for growth. It can backfire, at least like from what we saw this year. So open up as many channels you can and compare the results between those, and create benchmarks for each channel, because every channel has a different like LTV, obviously, and then take it from there.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that.
And I'm just curious, we didn't get to it, but for your particular vertical, for your particular genre rather, how is IDFA affecting UA volume and price already? You were telling me at the beginning what was happening in Facebook and how you went to UAC. IDFA effect, could you just quickly weigh in on that?
Well, look, so the IDFAs and the ATTs, well, I think this week it's going to be very much in place, all over the place. From last couple of weeks, then I didn't see like any huge effects. Well, obviously, like there is this effect of performance dropping on Facebook, which can be related to that as well. But other like UA channels and ad networks already built some, let's say, no IDFA solutions, and that's so far. All good.
So far, so good. All right. Okay, Tibo, you're last. Before we give it over to Chris, your growth hack, your best practice.
Yeah, I think bunch things together as quickly as you can and try as many things as you can. And also surround yourself in your team with creative people that can understand, that you train to understand data and that you train to understand like technical things. And I think that's the biggest strength you can have.
Excellent. Thanks everyone on my panel. Thank you, Chris, for the opportunity. Obviously, this is one that could have gone on for another hour, but hey.
No, clearly, I mean, the questions keep coming. So
they keep coming. There's another 10. We can't go.
do hunt down our incredible panelists in the window. Thank you so much, guys. That was fantastic. And Peggy, for your showing, that was fabulous. Have a great week and a great show. And hopefully follow up with you soon.
See you in Discord.
I've got to move straight along. Awesome. Well, great panel. I've made loads of notes of that. So we've learned an awful lot this morning already. That was we covered a lot of topics in that particular panel.